So I want to start. I will introduce myself at the very end, but I want to get to know you guys a little bit better, and I'm also going to jot down your names so I can remember everybody. So let's start, and we're going to go around, and if you could tell me your name, what year you are in school. I know I learned a couple people at lunch, where you're at school, and then, because I do need help staying current and relevant, a favorite musician that you're listening to right now. We did learn earlier, I do know who Cardi B is. I'm not that old. And then, what your favorite junk food is. Okay? Got it? All right, so I'm gonna have you start off.
My name is Dejanay. I'm a junior.
Deja?
Dejanay.
Okay, I'm gonna spell that totally wrong, but
I'm a junior. I go to Jefferson County High School.
okay. Who are you listening to?
Anybody
Okay.
actually, yeah. My favorite junk food is candy.
Any particular type of candy?
Sour candy.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Zoe, and I'm like the 12th grade, a senior now. I go to Ballard High School. I'm currently listening to Tyler, the Creator. My favorite snack is on chips.
My name is Jania. I'm a senior now. I go to Central High School. Let's see. A musician I listen to is, or at least a band, is like Fall Out Boys.
Okay.
And my favorite junk food is sour gummy worms.
2 sour candies, okay.
I'm Taya. I am a junior. I go to Ballard High School. My favorite junk food is hot popcorn and, let's play with it.
I'm Cecilia. I'm going in 9th grade. No, 10th grade. No, wait, 11th grade.
You're skipping fast.
I'll be a junior. I'm listening to Rihanna right now.
Okay.
I got to sing it back when I say that. And then my favorite junk food is honey buns.
My name is Grace. I just graduated from Manual. My favorite artist right now is, no, it's not a group. It's this person, his name is Roddy Rich.
Okay.
Yeah, I like his music, and my favorite junk food is Sour Patch Watermelon Kids.
Okay, I should have brought Sour Patch Kids for you also. Sorry. Total failing.
My name is Keisha, and I go to Valley High School. And I'm going to be a senior, and my favorite thing is hot fries. And I like Janae.
Janae, you said? Okay. She's good.
My name is Nadia. I'm a junior at Tennessee State University. I like to listen to Beyonce, and my favorite junk food is probably Mike and Mike's. Like the pink ones, the pink ones.
My name is Tanya.
Say it one more time.
Tanya. I graduated from Creek. I like Drake. And my favorite junk food is, I like food snacks.
My name is Bryce. I'm an intern here, so I'm just helping out anyone who has problems with learning coding. I just finished my first year of college, and I go to Yale. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I really like the artist Nikki, N-I-K-I. She's part of this music label called 88 Rising. And my favorite junk food is kettle corn.
Nice. All right, Anjali.
My name is Anjali. I I just graduated from Manual. Well, right now I've been listening to an artist named Quinn92 a lot. I think he's really good. He came to Louisville last year. And I eat a lot of junk food, so it's really hard to choose. But maybe Sour Skittles?
My name's Chris. I go to G-Town. I'm a senior. And mother would have to be a band I really like right now. And my favorite junk food is marshmallows.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks. My name is Britton. I will also tell you that my nickname is Grits. I will answer to either one of those. In a past life, I was a youth director and a camp counselor, so Grits was the nickname that I acquired there. And I am originally from Central Kentucky. I grew up in the Lexington area. And I moved to Louisville about almost 4 years ago. And I work with tech startups, so I will get into that a little bit in a minute, but I wanted to tell you my favorite hip-hop artist story, which is when I first moved to Atlanta, my roommate and I, we were living in like this little in-town neighborhood. We were like, okay, it's mostly like renters and grad students and folks like that. And we started to notice that on like Thursdays and Fridays, there were Lamborghinis parked in front of our house, and we're like, that's not mine. And they're all sort of like grouping around this like nondescript brick building about 5 doors down. And so we Google the address and we're like, oh, Stankonia Studios. So we lived 5 doors down from Outcast, which was awesome. And we would like, you know, take the dog for a walk and be like, hey, big boy, you know, because they would be like hanging out on their porch. So anyway, that's my like brush with hip hop fame in Atlanta. So super, super nice folks. But I'm going to start off with a little bit about my background, just to share sort of my story, and then I'm going to talk to you about sort of some guidance I would give, and then I'm going to share with you about what's in front of you too. So hopefully this is super informal, and so if you have questions or if you want to ask for any kind of clarification, just let me know, and hopefully it's not boring and is interesting too. So, like I said, I grew up in Central Kentucky. I knew I was going to go to college, and I knew that I wanted to leave Kentucky. I was like, I need to get away from everybody I went to high school with. Not that they were bad people, but you know, I was like, I need to go see things. So I was looking at schools, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still kind of don't. That's okay. And I ended up deciding I wanted to go to New England because it looked like every movie I'd ever seen. It looked super cool. I kind of wanted to go there. And so I actually was lucky enough to be able to go and do a tour of some colleges in the New England area. And at the time, I did not want to go to a women's college. I was like, are you kidding? There are no boys there. Guess what? I do not want to go somewhere without boys. But my mom was like, look at Smith anyway. And I was like, okay, fine. So we looked at Smith College, which is a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It's in a town called Northampton that is like every college town you've seen in a movie. And in fact, there have been like 6 or 7 movies filmed there. And the cool thing is that Smith is about 2,600 women, but it's in the Pioneer Valley where there are 5 colleges and a total of about 45,000 college students. So I was like, check, there are dudes here. And actually a fun fact is the 5 colleges in Western Massachusetts are what the characters from Scooby-Doo are based on. So the guys who started Scooby-Doo went to UMass. So Scooby is UMass. He's the public university that's sort of gregarious and, you know, everybody likes him. Fred is Amherst, which was originally a men's college and kind of preppy. Shaggy is Hampshire College, which is sort of a hippie college where you don't get grades and you can design your own major. And you can live in a yurt as well for college. And then the two women's colleges, Smith and Mount Holyoke, are Daphne and Velma, and they fight over who's Velma because she's super smart. So anyway, it's fun trivia for y'all. So I ended up getting into Smith, going to Smith, and it absolutely has been one of the best experiences of my life. And the thing that was interesting about that is, if you'd known me in high school, I was a total tomboy. And so when people found out I was going to women's college, they were like, you're not gonna have any friends. And I was like, okay, maybe. But it turns out that one of the things that was super cool about that is that instead of being in competition with the other women in my class, like I had been in high school, instead it was this like really amazing support system, like a sisterhood. And the other cool thing is when you looked around the college, you know, the valedictorian was a woman, the captain of the soccer team was a woman, the SGA president was a woman, like everybody who was doing all the amazing things, they were all women. And there's a lot of super amazing Smith alums who are doing super cool things. One of them is the senator from Wisconsin, and they asked her, her name's Tammy Baldwin, and she's been a senator for like 15 years. And they asked her when she was running for Senate, like, why did you think you could run for Senate? And she was like, well, I went to a women's college, I went to Smith, and all of the student senators were women. It never occurred to me that I couldn't. And so that's one of the cool things of being in that kind of atmosphere, similar to being in this kind of atmosphere. When you look around the table, all the super smart people in this room happen to be amazing young women. So just getting that kind of context in your head is really important. And whether you end up going to women's college or a co-ed college or an entirely different path, one of the things I want to talk about is make sure that you build a tribe around yourself. So there's two sort of important pieces that you're going to want. You're going to want mentors, and you're going to want that tribe or that sisterhood that's going to support you along the way. So when I got to Smith, I ended up majoring. I did not know what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be pre-med. I started out pre-med. I survived organic chemistry. But then I ended up switching to English. So I have an English degree and a biology minor. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I ended up being a youth director for a couple of years at my church that I grew up in, back here in Kentucky. And then I went to graduate school at Georgia Tech, and I did a master's in urban planning, which basically you're looking at how communities, how the infrastructure and the design of everything from road networks to where people live to what kinds of buildings you have and different environmental factors. That's what urban planning is involved in. When I was doing my master's, you have to do an internship, and I asked them if I had to stay in Atlanta because I like Atlanta a lot, but I also wanted to get out of Atlanta for a little bit. And they said, nope, you don't have to stay in Atlanta. And I said, do I have to stay in the United States? And they said, no, actually. So I went to Australia and did my grad school internship. So I worked in Melbourne, Australia, and also a community in Australia called Dandenong. And basically, all of the refugees that the UN was sending to Australia, if they were ending up in Melbourne, they were being sent to this community called Dandenong. And so at the local high school, you had over 150 languages being spoken. You had a lot of sort of frictions that were starting to happen when you just throw a bunch of people who have come from refugee situations into a community. And so the government in Australia was trying to figure out how can we make it so that this community works together so that those new different people coming in get to be an asset and it doesn't end up being a situation where people are frustrated and things escalate. So that was a really amazing experience to get to live and work on the other side of the world. I also worked for an engineering firm after I graduated in Atlanta, so I help do a lot of the government documents that are required when you're doing engineering and you're saying, you know, this is not having an environmental impact, or we're taking into account the people who are living where this project is, and we're making sure we're not impacting them negatively. I decided that was not what I was super passionate about, and I also was like, I kind of want to leave Atlanta. So that was right when the economy was taking a really hard hit back in 2008, 2009. I ended up going back to Australia for about 5 months. I was going to get a job down there, do some freelance writing, but my dad ended up being sick, so I came back to Kentucky. I ended up not staying in Australia permanently. So I was back in Kentucky, and I ran a nonprofit in Frankfurt that helped with economic development in the downtown. Has anybody ever been to downtown Frankfurt? Taken a tour of the Capitol or any of that business? Okay. It's a cute little downtown, so I lived there for 4 years and did that. Along the way, I had an idea for a mud run. Has anybody heard of mud runs? Okay, like Tough Mudder, Warrior Dash. So at the time, those were happening in like Atlanta. All my friends in Atlanta were doing those, friends in other places. There hadn't been one in Kentucky. And so I had this whole idea that I was going to do a Kentucky-themed mud run, and I was going to call it the Kentucky Derby. And all the obstacles would be Kentucky-themed, and it would be super cool. And I had that idea, and I told a couple people about it, and then I didn't do anything with it because I was like, I don't know how to start a company. Like, that sounds crazy. And this friend of mine, this guy, like, starts kind of pursuing doing it. And I was like, wait a minute, that's my idea. And he's like, are you going to do something with it, or are you just going to have an idea and sit on it? And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good point. I have no idea how to start a business, but I'm going to figure this out. And so I figured out how to start a business, and in 2013, had the first running of the Kentucky Derby, and we had 550 people from 8 states and 2 countries who came and did the Kentucky Derby. That was one of the most amazing experiences ever, because I was like, I had this idea in my head, and the first time someone I didn't know, who wasn't a friend or a relative, signed up and paid money to buy a ticket to the thing that used to be an idea in my head, it took everything I had, because I was like at an event promoting races. It took everything I had not to like jump over the table and go hug this random stranger and be like, oh my God, you bought my idea. But it was super cool to see that happen. I will tell you, I learned a lot during that process. We've only had the one race, in part because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I would do it all differently again if I had to go back and do it. So after that, I was like, you know, this whole entrepreneurship piece, I want to learn more about how to do it better next time. And so there was a job open here in Louisville. I also kind of wanted to move to a bigger city because I was in Atlanta, and then I was in Frankfurt, and I called Louisville my like Goldilocks city because it's in the middle and it's just right. So I took a job 4 years ago working for something called Enterprise Corps, and we work with people who are trying to get their startups off the ground. So especially if they have some sort of technology or science involved in it. And so that's everything from someone walking in the door and saying, I have an idea, what do I do with this? And we basically help them with what are those next steps? What do you do after you have the idea? And how do you figure out if your idea can possibly make money down the road? So that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years, is helping people figure out how to do that. So, and way back when, Anjali's dad actually used to work for Enterprise Corps too. Super, it was before my time. But it's really cool because I've seen people take their idea all the way up to, I ran into a guy the other day down in Nulu, and I was like, how's it going? I haven't checked in on you in maybe 6 or 8 months. And he's like, I have 10 employees. I have hired 10 people. They work for me based on this idea that I had that I started building. So that's a little bit about me. Any questions about anything I've said? Yeah.
What was your like very first step? Like after your friend was like, are you gonna do anything with this idea? What was your like? moment there?
Yeah. So I started doing research about the mud races that were out there. And that's a big piece. When you first have an idea, you want to start researching the marketplace. What exists right now, and how does your idea either improve upon what's out there right now or totally turn it on its head? You know, so I brought on a business partner. That's sort of a complicated thing because I brought him on because I didn't think I knew what I was doing, and he had an MBA, and I was like, oh, he's got an MBA. He knows what he's doing. It turns out we both had a lot to learn. But the first thing that we started doing was that research. So we went to other mud runs, like down in Georgia, and we would like ask people like, oh, like, you know, did you like this event? Like, what do you wish was better? Like, you know, why did you sign up? And we call that customer discovery, where you don't say, hey, I have an idea and it's so much better than this. Instead, you try to understand why that person bought into the thing that they bought into and what it is that they like and what maybe is an area that they don't like. So one of the things we heard, and this sounds like kind of a little thing, but Warrior Dash, Tough Mudder, when you got to the end of the mud run, you got a drink ticket to get a beer, and then you got like a voucher for some food. Well, they didn't have any vegetarian options. And so a couple of people were like, yeah, I'm a vegetarian and I got to have chips, you know? And so I was like, okay, note to self, like much better food, because all the food we were saying were like, that doesn't look so good, you know, and also vegetarian options. And then people were like, man, I wish there was a place to put my stuff while I was running. So like those little pieces, so that when we eventually did our race, the one thing I'm most proud about is that every person who ran it was like, that experience was seamless from beginning to end. I had a great experience. And then our volunteers, because we couldn't do it without volunteers. We heard from some of the other places that, you know, like they've been volunteering and they've been like 3 hours out in some hot field and like had no water and no snacks, and we were like, I'm gonna make sure they all have snacks. No, I didn't specifically request Sour Patch Kids, but you know, in retrospect. So we made sure that they had, like, that our volunteers were really well taken care of. And so at the end of the day, the volunteers were like, that was super fun. Not only did I get to like kind of give back, but I also like really enjoyed that experience. So that's one of the first things you do when you have that idea. You start researching what's out there already, and you start doing customer discovery about the people who eventually are going to buy your product. What is it that is the problem that they're having with what exists right now, and how can your product or your solution totally make that better? Does that make sense? And the other cool thing is, like, you'll start to hear as you're interviewing them little snippets that maybe you didn't think of. Like, I didn't think like, oh, I definitely need vegetarian options, but at the same time I was like, yeah, let's make that better, you know, that kind of thing. So then by the time you take your product to market, you've already got folks that, you know, you think it would be a good fit for. Any other questions? What are areas that you guys want to pursue? What are you interested in doing? And again, you don't have to know what you're doing with your life right now, but what are areas of interest?
I want to go into art, like specifically digital art, and like either video games or film.
Okay, awesome.
I would like to become a child minority psychiatrist.
Okay.
I think mental health is very important, and I think that minority children don't get like the same safe spaces that white children get.
Definitely.
you, Kiyoshi?
Hmm?
What do you want to do?
I mean, okay, I wanted to be a model. But I think I want to work with elephants, like, I really do.
Okay.
I'm so serious.
A friend of mine is actually a veterinarian who does large animals, and she works at a zoo.
But only elephants. I don't mess with the other animals, I just want to mess with elephants.
There are like, there are probably like sanctuaries in Africa for that.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Pediatric physical therapy.
That's right. That's what we got. Anybody else have ideas about what you might be interested in?
Zoe?
Oh, I think you like being a pilot.
Okay.
I don't know.
And it's okay. So I will say, you know, there are areas that I'm working with startups right now who are in spaces that didn't exist when I was in college. So AI, had no clue what that was. Blockchain, I mean, the internet, and I do know who Cardi B is, but
Oh.
my freshman year of college is when I got my first email address. And it was like one of those like black screens with like yellow letters. That was the internet.
What year was that?
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. So I started college in 1996.
1996. Oh, before.
Yep. It was a minute ago. Thank you. You're my favorite.
Do you guys know what the .com boom is? Like, do you know when websites became a thing? Do you know? Do you want to take a guess?
Yes.
Yeah, guess. Around what time did a bunch of companies start getting into like making websites and the website
The
space?
2000s.
It was like the
The
middle 2000s.
1974.
The late 90s.
74.
74.
Where it came out.
I don't even think real computers, usable computers.
They just were like.
So my roommate had the very first laptop on campus, and it kept crashing, and I was like, why would you have this thing? You know, and she's like, oh, because I can take it to class. And I was like, why are we like in class not taking notes like this? You know, and then by the time I went to grad school, like everyone had their laptop in class, you know, doing that kind of thing. I got my first cell phone 2 years after I graduated college. And it was really funny because when I went back for reunion, like we were on campus like trying to meet up, and I was like, I have none of my college friends' phone numbers like in my phone because we didn't have phones. Like you had like your phone in your, you know, your room. So I say that because there are very definitely going to be areas that you could go into in terms of your career that don't exist yet. And so one of the key critical things, even if you have a pathway that you're like, I am dead set on doing this, I would advise you to also keep your mind open about different areas that are of interest to you, or you know, just constantly be learning, because you never know when you might pick up on, you know, you're doing pediatric care and there's a digital solution out here that you become aware of and you think, you know, how could I bridge the gap with that and what I'm doing right now? Or, you know, when it comes to, you know, art and the digital space, there may be a whole different thing related to architecture or transportation that if you have one foot in this space, but you're also looking at other areas, you can be that person that starts to see the commonalities and see the ways that things can come together. And that sometimes is a little more frustrating because it's not a straight path, but it is an area where innovation comes in those places that are in between two set areas. And so the more that you can be, you know, passionate about something, but also, you know, the kind of woman who has exposure and understanding of different areas, that just makes you an even stronger person to have that kind of exposure. So sometimes I get frustrated that, You know, my college roommate is already retired. By the way, her name was Heidi Ho, which was kind of cool. She was from Singapore, and she was like, I'm going into investment banking. I've known this since I was in 9th grade, and that's going to be exactly what I do. And she's done it, which is awesome. And for me, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, you know, but I also have gotten exposure to different areas, and that has helped me, you know, figure out some bigger pieces to things that I want to be working in. So what you have in front of you is, anyone who knows me will tell you that the thing I'm probably most gifted in is that I keep in touch with everyone. I am still friends with someone I went to preschool with. I am still friends with someone I used to ride the train to work in Australia with. That's the only way I knew Mark, is we sat across from each other on the train every morning. And, you know, he's living in Sydney with 2 kids. So I'm connected to tons of people, and I'm on Facebook because I'm old. And I put it out last night. I was like, okay, women that I know who are involved in STEM, tell me what you wish someone had told you when you were in high school. And so between last night and this morning, I had a whole bunch of people write in. So this is what they wish someone had told them back in the day when they were interested in pursuing science or engineering, any of those different spaces. And so, you know, I will let you guys read through this on your own, but a couple of people, a couple of things that I will point out is that a common thread was confidence. And so whatever path that you go down, has anybody ever heard of the phrase imposter syndrome? Yes. Yeah. So let's diagnose it right now and acknowledge that it is a thing, but it is false. So imposter syndrome is something that women tend to have where you get into, you know, maybe you're in a class and you look around and you think, oh my gosh, everybody here is so much smarter than me. I'm gonna be like, I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm the weakest link, that kind of thing. Or you get onto a team at work and you're like, everybody else knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't deserve to be here. Imposter syndrome is that constant sense of doubting yourself and thinking that someone's going to find out that you don't belong where you are. It is not true. It's really, really tough to shut that voice off in your head, but it is not true. Whatever space that you are in, if you are in the boardroom, if you are in the surgery ward, if you are in advanced AP calculus, you deserve to be there, and you are capable of being in that space and totally killing it. And so just be aware that imposter syndrome comes up and acknowledge it for what it is. It is not true, but it's also going to be one of the hardest things you fight. And it's a daily fight. There are times when I stand up to give a presentation and I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody in this room knows more about this than I do. No, I know what I know, and I need to give that presentation, and I have every right to be there, and I have every capability of being there. And so the more that you can acknowledge it's a thing, but it's not a thing that owns you, that is going to be something that is going to last you your entire life. And it is critical that you believe in yourself and you have confidence about what you're able to do. Because I know that you are able to do even more than you think you can. And you just need to sort of believe in that in yourself. So that comes up a lot through their comments, is that sense of having a sense of confidence and believing in yourself. Another piece that comes up is that you need a mentor. Better yet, you need a couple mentors. And so one of the things that I will tell you, and it can be intimidating to say, hi, would you be my mentor? That kind of thing. But I will tell you that most people, especially if they're professional people, that's a huge compliment to them. You know, they've spent years getting to where they are, you know, working through and learning all the lessons that they've learned. And here's someone who is saying, I see that you are very accomplished and you've gotten to the place where you are in your life. I admire that, and I would really like your help. Could you share with me the knowledge and the perspective that you have? Most people, if they have the time and the bandwidth, will say yes to that, you know, or they might challenge you a little bit and say, I'm interested in doing this, you know, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're needing help with? But make sure you find some mentors, and your mentors will change. When I was a youth director, I was like, I have no idea how to be a youth director. So I called up the person that I knew within the Presbyterian church who was the most amazing youth director ever, and I was like, can I take you to coffee and will you help tell me how to do this? And she was like, of course, yes. And that helped me build the pathway of what I needed to do. And anytime I hit an obstacle, I knew that I could call her and say, what's your experience been? How would you handle this? But obviously, I have a different mentor, a different couple of mentors right now that I call on who are more involved in the entrepreneurial space. I was completely lost with the Kentucky Derby until I literally stumbled across a guy in Lexington who had helped with the Special Olympics. He had been one of the people who helped organize the Special Olympics. So he'd been involved in large-scale sporting events. And I'll be honest, he was sort of, it's way too old a reference, Charlie's Angels, where it's just Charlie on the phone. Never mind. But I never actually met Jack because he was dealing with cancer at the time and he eventually passed away from it. But I would call him and we would have like an hour-long conversation. He would be like, you know, what have you done? Have you gone through this and that? And I would just have a checklist of what I needed to do based on what Jack was helping me with. So definitely think about who your potential mentors could be. It could also right now be someone, maybe you're a freshman and there's a senior or, you know, a college student that you know of. You can ask them, like, gosh, you know, what do you wish you had done in high school? What advice would you give me? And it's a very rare person who doesn't say, yeah, I will totally share it with you and help support you. And the flip side of that is when you guys are all engineers and doctors and running your own businesses, you know, that opportunity to reach back and say, hey, there's a student at Central that I could maybe, you know, give some advice to or take out for coffee or that kind of thing. So it becomes this chain. Has anybody heard of the phrase good old boys network? Yes, no? So they used to refer to it in business as the good old boys network. And it was, you know, so-and-so would get their son or their buddy's son and like make sure that he had a spot in the company, that kind of thing. The emphasis on that is network. The guys who were part of that, who kind of got moved along and brought into the senior level positions, that had to do more with their network sometimes than actually how great they were as people. As women, particularly as women of color, we have to build our own network. And that has to be a community that reaches out and reaches towards each other to say, hey, like, this is the thing that I'm figuring out over here. If that helps you, then I just saved you a bunch of time and effort, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? So that sort of leads into having a tribe, or I don't know if Girl Squad's the right thing for it, but in addition to having that mentor who's a little bit ahead of you or maybe really senior ahead of you who can sort of guide your career path, you want a group of girlfriends, women friends who are gonna be that chorus that helps you. You can have some guys in there too, but I will say it's very important to have that group of women. And it may be friends that you have right now. It may be sitting around this table right now. And it may be some folks that you meet when you get to college or when you get further down your career, but you want those girlfriends that you are in a similar space in terms of how driven you are, what goals you have in your life, and you can be open and honest and supportive of each other. So for example, I have got some things going on with my job that I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, so there's a lot of changes going on within my organization, and I can sort of see that this pathway might be the one I want to take, but maybe it's this other one. And so I got on, I was going to say the phone, no. I got on the internet, and one of my best girlfriends lives in London now, and she is a marketing executive who is amazing, and she, in terms of her career, is a little bit ahead of me, but I can be super honest with her, and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think I should do? And she was like, I had that happen to me once. Here's what you should do. Here's what I would make sure you record this. I would do some research into that. And all of a sudden, it wasn't me just kind of going, panic. It was like, here's some things that I know to do. Here's someone who's also saying, don't forget, you're super smart. You're super amazing. You can do this. So you guys need to intentionally build that community because they are invaluable. They're going to help you with whatever's going on with your relationships, with your career, with kids if you choose to have them down the road. You want that group of women that are going to have your back and support you, and also have similar big time goals that you can all work towards. Does that make sense? And you'll see that in here, but that's also just that is critical for where it is you want to be getting in life.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because, me personally, I've had a strong group of friends ever since middle school. We went to college together, and our journeys are starting to kind of go our separate ways, and it's okay.
It is okay, and your group may change.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm really realizing now is that what we want, it's just different. And I'm really kind of business oriented, and I'm starting to realize that I need like-minded friends like myself,
right,
to help me get to the next level that I want to be at.
Yes.
So
It makes and it will change. The folks that I was super, super close to right out of high school, we're still friends, but they're not necessarily the ones that I'm calling for career advice. That shifted. The group that I have now are mostly women that I met when I moved to Atlanta for grad school. And I didn't sort of set out to say I want you to be my tribe that I call on, but at the same time, we all sort of have some similar goals and support each other, and that makes a huge difference. Because you're gonna, depending on what you set for your goals, you're gonna need folks who can help you figure out that next step. I love my mom and dad dearly. My mom got to a certain point in her career, and then she stepped out and had kids and never went back to a career. So she was able to sort of give me guidance up to a certain point, but beyond that, she was like, I don't really know. I was changing your diaper then. So finding women who have experience with those next steps has been a really critical piece. And also, if you do choose to have kids and you take some time off, finding women who then went back into the workplace and help to understand, what you need to do to prepare for that. Let's see. Oh, one of them said to make sure I tell you there's more to science than doctors. So if you're interested in science, there are a whole range of things that you can do. My friend Irite lives in New York City. She is Jamaican American. She's super awesome. She came down and spent spring break with me one time in Kentucky, and she's now a UK fan. Sorry if there's a Bell fan science, but I worked on that really hard. But Irate majored in, I want to say biology, and ended up, she was a science teacher at a high school for a couple of years afterwards, but now she's gone and she works for the health department in New York City. And she said, just make sure to let you guys know that, when you think about, oh, okay, I'm gonna go into science, I'm gonna be a doctor, there's a wide range of things that need people with scientific brains. And who knows what she's gonna do next, but she wanted me to emphasize that point. Let's see. The other piece is internships. So it is never too early to start thinking about your internships. And that's another area where, again, lots of people want to help, and lots of offices and companies have extra things that they could use extra hands for. So figuring out what internships you could do, maybe it's during the school year and you try and do something, 1 day a week after class, maybe not watch Netflix and instead go do something. But that's a piece where that can help you figure out what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do. So I spent a summer volunteering with a veterinarian, because I was like, I love animals, I love science, let's go do this. Turns out, I am not a veterinarian. Part of that was the smell of anesthesia made me almost pass out. And that was good to know before I went to vet school. So you want to do those internships because they're going to help you figure out what you might want to do and what you don't. Let's see, the other piece, so financial literacy is the most critical thing. Who here feels like they completely understand finances and all their personal banking and everything like that? Okay. This is a piece, even if you're like, I see numbers on a spreadsheet and I want to run the other direction, you have to know this. This is especially important for women because there are a lot of times where we get in situations, especially relationships, where if we don't have financial independence, people will end up staying in situations they shouldn't be in because they don't feel like they have the independence and the finances to move and do something not attached to that person. Does that make sense? If you're in a relationship with someone, you want it to be because they're awesome and they appreciate you and you are a great partner. You don't want it to be because you can't make rent without them, okay? You want to have savings. So even if it's every week you put aside $5, pay yourself first and set up that savings account, start socking it away, because someday that idea you have is gonna need to get out there and you're gonna need some funds to make it happen, or someday you're gonna have an emergency and you need to use those funds to help it. Take care of your financial situation, your personal financial situation. Make that the absolute priority. Because if that's a mess, everything else is gonna be a lot harder to do. So I don't know how much more I can emphasize that, but you have to take care of yourself in that space, and you have to be smart about it and know what's going on with your bank account and your savings and your investments, all that. Got it? Promise me you'll figure those things out? Okay. Let's see. A couple other things. Along those lines, this is something that I'm late coming to, but you want to set goals. So one of my best friends in Atlanta, I go and I stay with her all the time. And when you go into her bathroom, using the restroom, taking a shower, whatever, you shut the door, and on the back of her bathroom door is her 1, 5, and 15-year plan. And it's Post-it notes, and it's the things she wants to do. So she wants every 5 years to be able to take her daughter on a big fun trip somewhere. So that's on there as a goal. She has a goal of when she'd like to be able to retire. She has a goal of what she wants to be able to do with her house and where she wants to be in her career. And they are right there, and she looks at them every day, and she thinks about, how am I gonna get to this thing? So it doesn't have to be world domination, but figure out some of those short-term goals for yourself, some of the bigger long-term goals. Write them down, put them out into the universe, and put them somewhere where you are looking at them on a regular basis. So you are reminded, this is the thing I'm working towards. You know, I'm gonna get up and I'm going to make an effort today because that is my goal and I'm gonna get there. Does that make sense? You definitely, you know, they may change a little bit. You know, what was your goal at 17? May look a little bit different when you're 27, but you want to be thinking, what am I going to do? What are the big things I want to tackle in my life? And you want to put them out there because that helps you work towards them. So I saw a cross stitch, and I love it when women take sort of snarky things and they cross stitch them, because, you know, if you look at like a cross stitch pillow, you think like, oh, it's gonna say something lovely like home sweet home. When it says something super snarky, I'm like, that's the best. It's like cross stitch snark. So a friend of mine posted one and it said, have the confidence of a mediocre white man. So if you think about it,
Wow.
there are some guys out there, they never question whether they can do something. They just like run headlong into it. Oh yeah, this is gonna work out. Whereas we tend to go, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Am I gonna be good enough? If you can have the confidence of a mediocre white man, what could you accomplish? So keep that in your head, because you should also have the confidence of an amazing woman, because you can do all kinds of things with that confidence. And I'm getting close to time, but the last piece, two last pieces. One is have fun, because you only get one life. So set those big goals, but make sure some of them include something that's really fun. You know, all the hard work that you put in, if you're not enjoying some piece of it, you gotta build that in there, you know. So find that group of girlfriends, do great things with them, you know, do big things in your life and set those goals and achieve them, but also take time to really enjoy what you're doing. I'm gonna give you my card, and the deal is that my cell phone will always stay the same. If you ever need anything, or if you want a connection to any of these people, feel free to text me. You'll need to let me know, you know, who you are, because I might not necessarily be like, oh wait, right, you know, we met for an hour. Do we not have enough?
You have extras, I think.
I think it's just enough.
Any extras?
Oh, just enough?
Perfect count?
Yay.
You are welcome to text me or contact me anytime. If it's tomorrow and you're like, hey, I have a question about an internship, or if it's a month from now and you're like, right, I just started thinking about that thing you said, can you give me more guidance on it? Or honestly, if it's in 10 years and you're like, hey, remember that one time in June of 2019? You'll need to give me a little context, but if I can help in any way, I'm always happy to do so, because I want you guys to be amazing and successful and to thrive the way that you should. Any questions? I know I just sat and pontificated for an hour, but.
Why was the first, like the science thing, why was the first thing that popped up though?
I think because a lot of times people say like, oh, like I'm going into science, I'm gonna be a doctor. Like that's just the, you know, sort of the classic go-to thing if you're going into science.
I don't know, usually you have scientists or chemists or some sort of like weird
then you already know that there are lots of other options. I mean, I know that when I started pre-med because I thought like doctor is the thing that I should be. And I realized like a doctor is not the thing I should be. But I also didn't realize all the other careers that were options. And in retrospect, if I had, I might have stuck with science a little bit longer. And there's a couple of people that reference that where they said, you know, if I'd understood there were more options, I would have pursued those. So if you already know, then you're ahead of the curve.
If you could redo your life again, what would you change?
I will say that I try to own the decisions I've made and like where I am. I wish engineering had been at Smith. So Smith has the first women's only engineering program, and it started 4 years after I graduated. And I didn't know what engineers did, and I sort of wish I had known that and had that opportunity. One thing about that is that engineering, and I would advise this even if you are much more in the artistic frame of mind, having some specific technical skill that you can always fall back on is a good thing. So if you teach yourself programming, if you pick up some engineering, if you have some sort of technical skill that regardless, you can go out and do that even while you are building your own company or pursuing other things. Find that technical skill because that makes it a little bit easier. If you look at the job boards these days, they are looking for coders and programmers or other specific skill sets. Find one of those that you can just learn and bank and be able to come back on, even while you're figuring other parts of your life out. That's actually an area that I really wish I had spent a little more time learning some specific hard skill. I'm really good with soft skills. I'm really good with strategy. Those things are a little bit more difficult to find the right job that fits with them, whereas if I could say, hey, I am an amazing, Ruby on Rails programmer, I would never be without a job. So, and not necessarily never be without a job, but I could find one wherever I wanted to be. It's a little bit more difficult if you've got some of those softer skills as your main thing that you're selling, even if you're phenomenal with them. So I would pick up some sort of technical skill to just have that as something you can always fall back on. Any other questions?
Yeah, anyone else have questions?
I will point out a couple of people in here because I'm so excited they messaged. Nikki is, she's at the bottom. She's the engineer with EPA. She is mixed race. Her mom is white, her dad is black. She grew up in Indiana, and she was in the first class of engineers to graduate from Smith. She's amazing. She's also a stand-up comedian in her spare time. She's just so fun. So she's super cool. Leslie, who's a design engineer at Tesla. She is Asian American. She's 50 and she is just now taking up skateboarding. I was out in California, we went skateboarding together, and by that I stood on the skateboard. And I was like, I'm gonna fall and die. Let's see. Somebody mentioned being a pilot. Laura Lee, we went to grad school together, and she started her career designing medical devices, specifically a new type of stent for a heart surgery. She actually has her pilot's license because she grew up in Canada, and they had this like junior ROTC type thing where you could like get your pilot's license. So I went up in a plane with her one time, which was kind of crazy. Let's see. So those, I already mentioned Irate. Anyway, those are the specific women of color who are. Carla is Latina. She actually teaches Spanish, so she started out in STEM, and so she wanted you guys to know that, if that's not the thing that turns out you're super, super passionate about, it's okay to change. So anyway, and then the last part on here is a friend of mine is an engineering professor at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And he suggested a whole bunch of programs that are out there that are specifically looking at getting more women of color into STEM fields. So you might take a look at these, and if there's anything that resonates there, he might be able to give you a little more information about it, or if you want to email me, I can as well. So lots of cool stuff going
This
on.
is super helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. You definitely want to go through all of it together.
Well, there's my experience, and then there's the experience of people I know, so I figured you could use a little extra from their perspective too, so.
You guys have no other questions?
I mean, I can think of a bajillion questions here.
Well, okay, how about other kids? How about the rest of y'all?
So this is someone who is in the field, like how, I guess what I'm gonna ask is, how do you stay motivated? Because like outside of this, I am a teacher. I teach engineering, like computer science based, and it's hard for me to just stay motivated and have my students motivated. How do you
Yes.
stay motivated?
That is sometimes a very good question. So I think that's where the goals part can help, and the group of girlfriends, because it is really tough sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and you sometimes get really burned out. So if you have that goal, I also like to set really fun goals for myself. So you would never guess, but I turned 40 at the end of this month, which seems like a giant number that is really scary to me. And I was like, okay, I want to set some goals around this. So I'm going to take 4 trips for 40. And I started planning them a year ago. And so that has been like, okay, I'm not intimidated by 40 because I've got these fun things that I'm doing. And so, you know, if you're feeling burned out about something, throw out a crazy goal that you're going to work towards, something that's really fun. So part of that was one of my best friends and my roommate from Atlanta also turned 40. We were both having a hard time with it. So we flew to Los Angeles and we rented a car and drove to Seattle. That was our road trip together. And it helped, like it was a week away to refresh, to kind of reflect on life. You gotta do those things and take that self-care. You know, it helped that the Hertz rent-a-car guy was like, what is this trip you're taking? And we were like, yeah, for 40. And he was like, hold on. He hooked us up with a convertible. And we were like, what? Daniel, you are our new best friend. You know.
So funny.
So do those fun things, you gotta build those in, because that's gonna help with the burnout. And also, you know, being in a car with one of my best friends, and we spent the whole time talking about like parents and life and career and just having that time away. I came back refreshed, I came back motivated. And that's what you just gotta do that. So trip number 2 is that Kristen my friend in London is getting married, so I'm going to London for her wedding, which is crazy. And then trip number 3 is gonna be camping with some friends. And trip number 4 is my mom and sister and I are gonna go somewhere. And I've told them they're in charge of planning it because I'm not planning something for them because they're a hot mess. But anyway, so we'll see. So set those little, that's totally fun, but that's a thing, you know, that I got it on my radar about 2 years ago and started thinking, how am I gonna approach this? So, you know, set that goal out for yourself. What are you gonna do when you get your PhD? It better be a fun celebration. Set something that, you know, when I finish my book, or when I graduate from this, like, here's the thing I'm gonna do to mark that occasion. Because it helps motivate you a little bit. Does that make sense? You know, or, so my mom, because my passion is writing, and so I constantly am like working, I have a book that I'm working on, it's taking forever. That's a whole nother thing. But my mom was always like, oh, like when you make money with your writing, I want you to buy me a Mercedes convertible. And so the very first time I ever got paid for writing, I went online and I bought her a little model Mercedes convertible, and I was like, here you go. And she was like, what? And I was like, you did not specify. So, you know, so those are fun things to mark. But well, it has been awesome spending time with you. I actually have to go get on a call at 2:00, but seriously, keep in touch with me. Let me know what you're doing. If you're on LinkedIn, you can send me a LinkedIn request as well, and we can connect up there. And if there's anything I can do to help you, just let me know. And when you're certain that you want to go to Smith, let me know too. Okay. All right.
She tried very hard to have me go to Smith.
I did. I did.
Well, Annika still has time.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We're gonna get her. So I serve on a board for Smith, and we go back twice a year, and I always get the Smith girls who are from Kentucky together. There's like 10 of them, and we get milkshakes. I take them in late, and it's a lot of fun. And they're from all around. We've only got 2 from Louisville, so
Is one of them's name Morgan?
yes.
Oh, I know Morgan.
Yay!
Yay.
So,
Really coincidental.
it's awesome. And another plug for Smith. So the former CFO of Brown-Forman is a Smithy. Tori Merton McClure, who's the president of Spalding University, is a Smithy. The woman who owns Secretariat is a Smithy. The first female mayor of